We are ready to continue. We have more people in the room, more people joining us online. I'm happy about this next keynote. Our next presenter is a nugget in himself that most of you are probably looking forward to hearing here today. He's going to answer actually very important questions: how to lead high-performing teams, how to work with diverse talents, and how to create a culture where visionary ideas thrive, not die. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome on the stage with a loud round of applause, Dr. Anthony Yadamis. Welcome, Anthony. Happy to see you with us here today.
Let's keep it going for you guys for being here today. Come on, give yourself
a round of applause.
Thank you. And we also have the organizers of this event and their team all here, so please give them a round of applause. They've done an incredible job here. It's an absolutely phenomenal event. So, what if I told you that the most dangerous person on your team is also the smartest? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I don't mean that they're ill-willed or trying to do something bad. What I mean is they've been fed a lie. They've been fed the myth that somehow being a world-famous innovator means working on your own in an office or a laboratory somewhere and trying to figure out the real meaning to the problems in the world and the problems in life. But the reality is today, innovation is collaboration. We cannot create new solutions to really persistent problems unless we're working with each other. And in the future, the people who can build bridges between the idea makers and the world around us, they're going to hold the power. They're going to hold success in the palm of their hand. Now, my name is Dr. Anthony Giannoumis. I am a American, by birth, but I'm Norwegian by choice. I emigrated to Norway 14 years ago. I always say it's 14 years, one winter, one long 14-year winter. And I started my career as a computer programmer. So I started as a software engineer, and then I decided I was going to take a right turn at the traffic light, and I became an opera singer. Could it be? Is it possible? Yes, it is. I sang opera for 2 years with the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra in the United States, and then I took another right turn at the traffic light and decided I would become a scientist. I did my doctorate. I published over 50 academic peer-reviewed articles, acquired over 13 million euros worth of research and innovation grants, and a few years back, I took another turn, went into business for myself, and now I'm a motivational speaker, storyteller, and stand-up comedian, believe it or not. Now, I want to go back to that idea of the most dangerous person being the smartest on your team. Because last week, I was at an event a lot like this. And I was on a jury panel, a jury of experts. And we were there to judge pitches. There was a pitch-off, 100 pitches in one day. And I was sitting on that stage for what felt like hours, because after pitch like 12, my brain just turned to mush. I could barely pay attention, barely focus, barely think about anything, until this guy gets up on stage and he just commanded the presence of the entire room. And every member of the jury panel starts sitting up a little bit closer, starts listening a little bit closer to what he's saying, and he's on fire. He is just owning the space, and everybody in the audience is connecting and vibing with him. And the jury panel is just jaws on the floor, because the work he was pitching was so brilliant, so innovative. He had created an operating system that was expressly designed for people who are blind. So the whole idea was to empower blind people to be able to use technology, and he'd come up with this operating system, and his code was elegant. He even showed it to us. It was beautiful. And we're all wrapped up in what he's saying, and afterwards, the jury slowly stands up and just slow claps him as he bows, and he takes in all that praise and all that love. And so we started asking him questions. We started asking him about his idea, where he came up with it, what was the origin story behind all of this hard work, all this genius. And he's answering our questions spitfire. Everything we throw at him, he's got a great response to. And again, we're just enamored of this man. We have fallen in love with him and his idea and his passion. And he's talking about how it's going to create so much impact. It's going to create change in the lives of people who are blind around the world. And it's got a business model behind it because he said it can scale globally with a touch of a button. And again, we're all just vibing with everything he's saying. And it popped into my head, I wonder how has he worked with people who are blind? Because for me, that makes sense. If you're going to develop an operating system for someone who's blind, you want to kind of work with those communities to make sure that your piece of work is going to be relevant. And so I ask him, and suddenly he's quiet. And the vibe of the whole room starts to drop. And the jury is quiet. And he doesn't say anything for a moment. And then he confesses, I haven't actually worked with anybody who's blind. I came up with this brilliant idea, but it was something that I believe in. I think this is an innovation. I think this is going to change the world. And so at that moment, the jury went from on the edges of their seats to kind of looking at him with crossed arms, kind of looking at him with a degree of skepticism. And he could feel the change in tone. Later that evening, we had a reception where all the pitches, all the innovators, and the jury were going to be there. And I'm sitting with all my fun, expert colleagues, and I'm drinking my little glass of kava, and we're, just congratulating each other on all the awesomeness that was the day. And I see this man. His name was Edward. Edward comes up to me, and he says, hey, can I talk to you for a moment? I said, sure, Edward. What you got? How are you doing? And he said, hey, I saw that the vibe of the room changed. He said, but I really believe this idea is important. I really believe in the impact of this work. I really believe this could change lives. And he said, is there any way we could work together? Could we collaborate, and then maybe we could make this thing a reality? And I said, Edward, your idea is really brilliant. However, without having a connection to someone who is blind, for me, I can't support it. I need to know that you've been working with people who are the target, the beneficiaries, the focus of your product, of your service. And he says, okay, fine. He says, I don't know anybody. I said, I can connect you with my colleague. She is the president of the American Federation of People Who Are Blind. So this is an organization that represents blind people across the United States. I said, I'll set up the meeting. All you got to do is show up and talk to her. Tell her, pitch her your idea. He said, great. So a couple of weeks later, he was going to sit down, plan to meet with this woman. And when she comes into the room, she's blind, she's using a white cane, but she's also using her phone. And she's just tapping on her phone, and the phone's speaking back to her. And whenever it speaks back, it speaks really, really rapidly. Because for her, she can understand what it's saying. But for someone like me, I can't understand. It's going too fast. So she's interacting with her phone, and she's typing and pressing on the buttons on her phone. And then she sits down. She says, hold on a minute, Edward. I want to talk to you about your idea, but I need to send a couple of emails off. So she opens up her MacBook, again, typing on the MacBook speaking back to her. She's typing, sends the email off, closes the MacBook, says, okay, Edward, you're here. Pitch me. And Edward starts in, same as he did on stage, on fire, was amazing pitch. He says, this is going to change the lives of blind people. And she says, but Edward, we don't want a separate operating system. We want the same operating system that works for everyone else. We just want it to work for us. We want to use Android, we want to use iOS, we want to use Windows, but we want it to work for us as well, and not just folks who aren't blind. And at that moment, his dreams of being this world-famous innovator were crushed. The countless hours he spent developing this product, finessing the code, all of the brilliance and genius he had dedicated was erased. It was rendered useless. And I'm really critical of Edward. I'm really someone who says, you should have done this before. You should never have gotten on that stage having not talked to someone who was blind. And I have a very rude name that I use to refer to folks like Edward. I refer to them as narciss ass. And a narciss ass is a word I came up with. It's someone who exhibits excessive admiration of themselves, the complete oblivious arrogance. So this is an example sentence. They wrote the whole API without consulting anyone. Total narciss ass move. Edward built this software without consulting with a person who was blind, and that was a narciss ass move. So the first takeaway I want to give you guys, which is actually based on stories that I've written here in my book, The Sins and Wins of Inclusive Leadership. The first takeaway I want to give you is you can't build your products in isolation. You have to build them in conversation. Don't build in isolation, build in conversation. Second key idea I want you guys to take home here has to do with how psychological safety can help innovators really achieve greatness. Now, there's a concept in leadership called decentering. And 90% of top leaders use decentering as a tool in their work. And decentering is a very simple concept. It simply comes down to finding the intersection between your work and the interests of the people who care about your work. It's about finding that overlap. And so as a leader, when you can identify that overlap, that process is called decentering. Now, I want to tell you a story about a former student of mine named Randy. So I'm a professor at a university. I teach a lot. And I had a student a couple years back named Randy. And Randy was really brilliant. She got an A in class. She was always showing up, did great work. Really, really, really proud of her. And I was sitting in my office one day, and I'm typing away on my computer, answering emails and doing all the professory stuff. And Randy knocks on my door, rap, 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 says, "Anthony, I read your doctoral dissertation. This is the book that you write after your PhD." She said, "I read it, all 826 pages, and my heart exploded with joy because nobody has read this document, except maybe my mom looked at the first page and that was about it." But Randy's like, "I read this book," and I was so proud, and I was waiting for her to shower me with praise about how amazing this piece of work was. And she says, "I found some mistakes." Oh, and now I feel a little nervous. And so I say, "Randy, why don't you sit down?" And she sits down on a little stool, and I'm sitting there in my fancy office, fancy professor chair with all of my leather-bound books behind me. And I say, "Okay, Randy, take me through what you think these mistakes are." And she flips it open and goes to page 26, and she says, "Anthony, here on page 26, you mentioned a term that you were going to use, but you didn't really define it in the dissertation." And so I said, "Okay, fine, no worries. That's a minor thing." And then she flipped forward, page 56, and said, "Anthony, you didn't cite this researcher that works at a different university." And when she said his name, it was one of my competitors. And I said, "Well, why would I? No, this guy does terrible research." And then she said, "Well, actually," and then there's another page here, it didn't make sense to me. It just wasn't clear." And so on and on she goes, one criticism after another, after another, and after another. And I'm starting to get irritated with her. I'm starting to get upset because now she's picking apart all of these things that she thinks are mistakes in my work, my research that took me years to do. And so I start imagining her as this little annoying insect, this little buzzing mosquito around my head, and you just want to swat it away. And I'm getting more and more irritated at Randy. And then I took it one step further, and I stopped imagining her just as a mosquito, but as a little baby mosquito, a little crying, whining baby mosquito wearing diapers. That's how my brain was processing what was in front of me. And I was kind of just in this haze, this this kind of delirium. And the only thing that snapped me out of it was there was a car outside of my office that honked, and it was like I was right back in there. And I'm looking at Randy, and Randy's looking back at me. And it was at that moment she said, "There's a part of your analysis that was missing." She said, "There's a piece here that you could have done more data collection, could have found more evidence." And I realized she was right. There was a part of my doctoral degree that was missing. There was a gap in what I had created. And it was at that moment, in a flash, Randy turned from this annoying mosquito to a superhero right in front of me. And I said, "Randy, you're right. You're absolutely right." I said, "Why don't you and I work together? We'll do a research project. We'll publish a paper, and then we can fill this gap. We can collaborate." Randy said, "Yeah, I'm in. I'm just a bachelor student, but whatever. I can contribute." So we write this paper. We submit it to Cambridge University to publish. We were shooting high. Cambridge comes back. We love it. We're going to publish it. Wow. They said, "We want to invite you to come present the research." We get on a plane. We're at Cambridge. We present the research. I'm feeling so good about myself. Randy's feeling good about herself. I say, "Randy, I'm going to head back home. You take care. Finish up the conference, and I'm going to go fly back to Oslo." I'm a nervous flyer, so whenever I get to the airport, I'm just like ready to get on the plane, get off the plane, and go home. And so I'm standing in line, ready to board, and I feel my phone ring. It vibrates in my pocket, and I pick it up, and I see it's Randy. So I just ignore it. I figured she just wanted to tell me, what's happening, fine, no worries. I get in the airplane, I'm finding my seat, I feel the phone ring again. I ignore it, I text her, "What's going on, Randy? I don't have time for this. Is it an emergency?" I sit down, third time my phone rings. I pick it up. I say, "Randy, this better be a really urgent situation. This better be an emergency, otherwise it's too much." And she says, "Anthony, we won an award for best paper from Cambridge University." And I was shocked. I was mind blown. Me and this student collaborated on a paper and got it published and then won an award. And this is the award. We won best paper. And I want to point something out here. At the top of that paper, it's the list of authors. You got Randy as first author, a bachelor degree student. You got me as second author and another colleague of ours. This award made me woefully unpopular with my colleagues at the university. When they said, "You worked with a bachelor degree student? That's not science." And then I looked at and pointed at this award and I said, "Well, Cambridge thinks it is. Cambridge sure thinks it is." Now, this award went on to shape my and Randy's career for decades to come. I get to talk about this story on stage because of the work we did, but the only reason we got to do this is because I took a step back and I shut my mouth and I listened to what she had to say. And this is the second key takeaway I have for you guys. We as leaders, we as innovators, we as geniuses need to shut up so that the people on our team don't shut down. We need to shut up so they don't shut down. Now I'm going to wrap up here, but I want to tell you one last story about Randy and I because we worked together for many, many years to come. And one day I was in a meeting with Randy and I was leading the meeting. And there was about 20 people in the room, and I was talking, doing my thing. And afterwards, Randy pulls me aside. She says, "Anthony, when you were leading the meeting, there was someone in the room who wanted to say something, but they felt inhibited. They felt like they couldn't say something because you were taking up so much space." And she said, "I want to teach you a signal, a secret gesture, the sign language gesture for shut up. So that when I look at you and do this gesture, you know it's time for you to shut up so that someone else in the room can have their say." And I said, "Teach me, Randy. Teach me, your professor, how to do the sign language for shut up. And now I'm going to teach you this same gesture." And it's very, very simple. You know the chef's kiss, the Italian gesture? You know this one? Yeah, can we all do it together? Yeah, there you go. All right, chef's kiss, there we go. The sign language gesture for shut up is simply open palm, chef's kiss to the corner of your mouth. Let's do it all together here. Open palm, chef's kiss to the corner of your mouth. So I want you guys to teach this gesture to your teams if you're the leader. And if you're one of the team members, I want you to teach that to your leader so that when you're sitting in a meeting with them and they're looking at you like this, then you know it's time for you to shut up, or else they, the team member, will shut down. So what do you do when someone like me won't stop talking and keeps going blah, 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 blah? What do? Let's do it all one last time together. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, boom.
Wow. Anthony, I don't even know what to say. Where can we get more of you?
You can get more of me here today. I brought 10 and only 10 copies of my book. And first, 2 people that buys a copy gets a free box of chocolates from Norway.
Oh, wow. Round of applause to Anthony. Amazing. You had us at every word. Anthony, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.